Welcome, one, welcome all to episode 13 of the Weirdest of the Weird podcast. My name is Nathan, and today I'm going to be reviewing a trifecta, so to speak, of movies I saw in theaters going from summer to late summer to fall to late fall to now. I'm late to the party, as per usual. You guys know my style. But I'm going to be covering seven movies that I was able to both watch in theaters. One, I believe, Hitman. Hitman was a Netflix movie, so I watched that on Netflix. And everything else I was able to catch in theaters, which I'm glad for. Uh, Glad to see that my ratio is one streaming, one movies. My OG love to movie theaters. But anyway, just going to be covering seven movies today on today's episode, that being Alien Romulus, Twisters, Hitman, Cuckoo, Kinds of Kindness, Trap, and Deadpool and Wolverine. So, first and foremost, I wanted to talk about my one movie that I came out of surprisingly liking it more than it probably should get enough love for. Um, that being Alien Romulus. I was very decently surprised. I will shamefully admit I have not seen the original trilogy of Alien films, so I have homework to do. I know. um, but I really did enjoy this movie. It had, I feel like, a lot on its plate to accomplish. I feel like one of giving audience certain expectations, because before this film, we had the Prometheus prequel films. I say prequel because it's starting to slowly tie in some aspects of the original Alien trilogy and having it take place before the Alien trilogy films, the original ones, and kind of setting up new lore, so to speak, to it. So it had to, it did a surprisingly good job tying the Prometheus and original Alien movies together. Um, I feel like that's a feat in its own. um, and it has almost an underdog tone of having these ragtag team members boarding a cargo ship and kind of going through that stereotype of, wow, they really have no idea what they're getting themselves into. And I loved it. I loved that it's kind of a slow dread horror film. I feel like kind of owing back to its roots of the original Alien trilogy. And my favorite point of the film where, stuff really starts to hit the fan is when they go into a room just full of frozen face huggers. And I was just kind of just looking around like, uh, who's gonna tell them? Yeah, but I love that this film is crass, it's gory, it's disgusting. There's one point in this film where they're removing a face hugger from a person and you just see a long rod coming out of their throat, going back to how a face hugger plants a xenomorph into like it needs a human to create a xenomorph basically. But I I love this film, man. It had a surprising amount of heart to it, and it kind of understood the assignment of having the perfect blend of not too much characters, a perfect amount of horror, a perfect amount of homage to the xenomorphs, the face huggers, and this movie is stunning both in terms of cinematography and production design. This movie really did go back to square one of almost a picturesque recreation of the first Alien movie, of how the set design looked on that film. And I really hope this movie gets some recognition for that, because it was like, for in my movie, you know, fanaticism, this is like seeing a Picasso painting. It just looked incredible. Um, and a few nitpicks here and there. This movie paying homage to the first Alien film. I feel like there were a couple parts where it was a little bit too on the nose, to a like a very corny extent. Um, but other than that, I came out of this film really liking it. And segueing into, you know, the summer blockbuster, so to speak, I saw Twisters. And, this was, I feel like, coming out of this summer, this was the ultimate summer movie, you know. And I do give it props for it. I'm guilty as charged. It was an overall vibe. This movie was, I mean, enough to a point that, the movie kind of expected you to be blind to the plot and, some of the characters and character arcs in this film. And that's okay. It was a vibe. This movie made me like country for a second. And coming from a guy who really does not like country, that's really saying something. But yeah, this movie, you know, uh, of all the things that I loved about this movie, Glenn Powell, for sure. I mean, aside the obvious of his good looks, this this movie, the string of movies of both Hitman and this movie is really good, of kind of having Hollywood usher in, that Glenn Powell is the next thing. And I'm here for it. He's got the charisma, he's got the charm. He has, some really good acting chops. And in terms of, again, how, the pointless action in this film, I did have fun. Um, but, I am a guy who believes in some realm of realism. This movie definitely lacked some aspects of it. Um, there's a scene in this film where Glenn Powell's crew of storm chasers, they drive their specially built pickup truck, drill themselves into the ground, and are somehow able to withstand going through a tornado. I was watching that, I was just like, what a load of baloney. Come on. I mean, even if it's like, you know, if someone's saying, "Oh, but it's just an EF2, it's just an EF1, Nathan, don't question it." Any sane person would be like, even if it's a weaker tornado, are you really going to run the risk of having yourself go through like a weak tornado like that? Was just like, come on. But aside from stuff like that, um, I loved it. Um, they really did use Glenn Powell as a marketing tactic for this film, and it was pretty tiring, but it was a overall, it was a good movie to really kind of turn your brain off at some points, and really have a good time. And again, going to, talking about Hitman on Netflix, that film, I feel like if Twisters was to show off charisma and charm from Glenn Powell, this movie really shows off, um, you know, Glenn Powell's range in acting. Because without giving away, the premise of the film, he's an undercover agent posing as various different criminals in the realm of, being a hitman. And it was impressive to see him portray various different personalities, various different accents, going through all these costume changes. And, I really hope Glenn Powell, the actor, kind of takes a delve into, you know, having a very, you know, wide range of acting roles going into different realms of characters, because this movie was kind of just an appetizer for that, and that he has potential in doing that. And that was the one thing I really loved about this film, and that really entertained me all the way through. It's just, and unfortunately, that aspect of the film was that was the shortest, of course. So I wanted more of it, but the film was a cat and mouse of, you know, is he going to get caught in the act of, you know, being undercover and stuff like that. And, that was very entertaining. But the writing, the story was pretty run of the mill. But again, I came out of Hitman really liking Glenn Powell's acting and his range in this film. Another film that I loved, that was a surprise hit for me coming out of, the late summer was Cuckoo, starring Hunter Schafer. And I really love this movie. I'm not too much of a horror person, and I know this movie is slightly horror and slightly thriller. And I came into this movie not having any expectations whatsoever, but I surprisingly loved everything about this movie. The tone and the eerie location of the remote mountains in Bavaria, the 80s, 90s esque aesthetic, um, and the filmy grain of how it's filmed. It was checking all my marks. Trust me, it was incredible. And, you know, Hunter Schafer really gives a believable performance of someone who is thrust into a situation that almost anyone can relate to, or not that, anyone can relate to, but how she acts is something I could personally definitely relate to. Um, and seeing her thrust into a situation that, you know, is just beyond comprehension, was really cool to see. And the monster in this film, so to speak, without giving away too much spoilers, was actually a very unique, monster to see in action. And um, this movie definitely, if you want, warrants a rewatch, because you can kind of pick up on how the monster works and how it captures its prey. It's going to definitely leave the audience to kind of piece together how it functions. But yeah, it was a very, unique horror film that I came out of come watching. And on the realm of horror and thriller, kind of going into one of the rather weird and impactful movies I definitely watched um recently, that definitely has left a permanent stain in my memory coming out of watching it, was Kinds of Kindness. Um this is my first foray into um this director's filmography. This is the same director who's done Poor Things and The Favorite, which I have yet to see. Um, but something tells me from this film, this is one of the more exaggerated of storytelling films from this director. because it has a sense of quirkiness that I feel like is not on as full display as it is in this film. And oh boy, uh, this movie is definitely something else. Um, Firstly, the cast did a phenomenal job of believably selling the weirdness in all their characters. Um, to a crazy extent. Um, Audience members will definitely come out of this movie seeing this, being like, uh, they will definitely question some of these characters as sociopathic and psychopathic. Like, not just one, both. And one actor in particular that I commend for in this film is Jesse Plemons. He's been on a rise lately. Um, you know, aside from this film, the like another more recent film that I saw him that had a meaningful impact in his performance, and it's crazy because he was a cameo. To be fair, is in Civil War, where he played like this, without giving it away, a very scary character who, within a short amount of time, establishes just a really terrifying presence on screen. And so just imagine that acting range, but like exemplified to like, being on screen for like so long and so, for I think this movie's runtime is like 2 hours and 45 minutes, but he's there on screen for most of the time. And, you know, he's just such an oddball. And you know he kind of imbues himself in a very chaotic self in these characters, and these characters are just everyday normal people, but he's able to just find one characteristic about, you know a character trait of his, and just pull on that thread until that thread is just completely covered the screen. And I feel like I could say the exact same thing about Emma Stone, and, you know, the exact same way of how she portrays her everyday character is shown in this film. Um, she, you know, I feel like all of the cast are able to carry this film in, holding together, that you can kind of make an excuse for this film being good, even though narratively the film is kind of weak. It is nice that the film has three different storylines and entrusts um, the actors to play very similar characters throughout these storylines, but I kind of felt like it was a cliche. It was executed brilliantly. Um, but I just felt as though, you know, it was a slight cliche in my head, but it's very interesting to see the compare and contrast of Jesse Plemons' characters and Emma Stone's characters reflected, um, kind of as opposites, throughout these, three stories shown in the film. The first story, Jesse Plemons is in a position of power and slowly losing that power. Whereas in the second story, Emma Stone's character is portraying a character just like that. Whereas Jesse Plemons in that third story is gaining power. So it was nice to see. It was an exercise of meditation of, you know, the yin and yang mixed in with whatever the fuck, this story has, and gory and just disgusting and just out there, you know moments in this film, and I really loved it. You know, the whole roller coaster, the whole package. You know, I loved it. Um, Another movie that, again, I know, like I'm saying, most, if not all, of these films that I saw, I had a great time watching. And I feel like not only was I having a great time, but I definitely felt like the director of this next film, M. Night Shyamalan, really did have a great time watching this film, like directing this film, watching this film. He's a director. He directs. He directed the film. But I feel like this was a passion project of his that he really wanted to do. Um, and he, I, you could just see it on the screen, like, the the passion and commitment, aside from the really clunky writing. Like, I feel like he had a great time making this movie. Um, it's such a simple premise of, having a serial killer disguised as a dad taking his daughter to a concert. Um, that is unknowingly he's walked himself into a trap by law enforcement to try and his catch him. So it was a very cool cat and mouse game of how is he going to get out of this, and it was really thrilling to see that. Um, and I overall really love the persona of this, terrifying dad. You just see just how psychotic he is, that, he can just play two personalities of being a normal civilian, but also sometimes I kind of forgot, oh shit, yeah, he is a serial killer. um, and Josh Hartnett is really able to, sell that through his acting, even through, again, the really awkward, clunky script writing that you find in a typical M. Night Shyamalan movie. But, you know, and one thing that I found really cool about this film is that M. Night Shyamalan has his daughter in such an integral part of the film, um, play the pop star singer. It was just really cool to see that, and it was heartfelt and very sweet. Um, I was seeing some behind the scenes of, you know, um, not in not on this film, but on old, that you know, they both very much so share the same passion, not in filmmaking, but in just arts and entertainment. Because she sings all her original songs in this film, which is just I find just so cool. And having that passion, integrating that and into this film and making that a factor of the film was really cool to see. um, and having this whole concert be like an overall, you know, because the concert is kind of at least half of the film in terms of setting on screen. So just to make that a practical set, excuse me, and knowing, what goes into filmmaking, the process and the creative process, me just having just a glimpse of what that's like from a background actor's perspective, maybe really appreciate that factor of this film. Um, and if there's one thing that sucks about this movie, aside from the clunky writing, um, is it just ends. I really wanted more of Josh Hartnett's The Butcher. Um, yeah, I feel like it kind of ended too quickly for me. um, but yeah, I loved it. And one big blockbuster movie again that I came out of watching was this summer was Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, this movie was this movie was pretty. I'm gonna say it. I think this movie was better than you know Endgame. Uh, it was you know I feel like it was you know I it had a lot to juggle, and I do applaud its effort again in succeeding. Having a great story, but I feel like unlike Endgame, for 3 hours, it's still I love Endgame, but I felt like narratively it had a lot to juggle because it had to kind of be a closing chapter um for most of the characters in that film. But I think one advantage of this film is it kind of opens the possibilities and really does joke at the fact of this whole multiverse thing that, both Marvel and DC are doing nowadays. And, Deadpool being Deadpool and Ryan Reynolds being Ryan Reynolds just, you know, does not hesitate to waste any time not making fun of it whatsoever. And I love it. And I feel like there was a lot of heart in this film. Um, having this film be the first live action on screen appearance of Deadpool and Wolverine. Um, you know, the movie again kind of also meta jokes about it's an R-rated film under Disney. Watch what you say. It was, making meta jokes about that, and I really love that. And it it kind of the movie ends on an upbeat beginning of a friendship um, amongst Deadpool and Wolverine that I really want to see, in the future. These characters just have such a natural chemistry on screen, and that's, in no part that's credited to Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds, who really sell these performances and make the movie overall enjoyable. And I that's one thing I definitely loved as this film's strength. One thing that did get annoying to me, and again, this is an aspect of Deadpool from the comics, so this is like a character trait. I mean, he is the merc with the mouth. Um, and again, I've seen this, reflected in both different movies, but I feel like it's annoyingly apparent in this film. He needs to know once, like, Deadpool sometimes needs to just shut the fuck up. And I love that. I love that Wolverine also acknowledges this, like, nod, please just stop talking. And I love that the movie does acknowledge this, but I feel like, there are some points in the film where I was just like, look, I get it, but please just shut up, please. Um, but again, furthermore, this film proves that Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, just like RDJ, they were born to play these characters, and they're irreplaceable. They really cannot be replaced. Um, and I love that this film, yes, it had cameos, but I love that it was confined and it wasn't too ridiculous. Like you could somehow see it being plausible, but it wasn't just like so crazy. Like, I don't know, like having a character just come out of nowhere and not having it be plausible. Um, it wasn't grand, it wasn't audacious, it was in some ways plausible, and I like that. But yeah, those were that was my summer, late summer, fall, late fall catalog of films that I saw this in that time span. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. If there's a movie or a TV show that you want me to cover on another episode, just feel free to comment that down below. And as usual, thank you guys so much for listening. This is my 13th episode. Oh my gosh, it's 13. That's something. But I I really want to take the time to really thank you guys who, you know, however many there are of you. I really thank you guys for really taking the time out of your day to listen to me say to complete sentences and hearing my opinions. It really does mean a lot. And thank you. Just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Alrighty, that's gonna be it for today's episode. Again, if you guys like what you're hearing, be sure to drop a like on this video or subscribe for more content later down the line. All right, I'll see you guys on the flip side.